So we have here three things we need to think about in this Mishnah. It says, keep a distance from an evil neighbor. Okay, the language is harchek mishachen ra. Okay, what's rachok mean? Far. Okay, so we have to stay afar from an evil shachen ra. Ra means bad or evil. Okay. Do not what? Page 27.
27.
Page 20.
25.
25.
Yeah, 25.
All right, 25.
Okay. He did.
The next one is divorce yourself. It says, Al titchaber el rasha. Okay. Don't, it's not clear what it means. It could be don't associate, don't connect. Chibur means to connect. Chaver means friend. So it could be don't be friend. There's something we need to stay away from two types of people. One is from an evil person. Another one is from a bad, the first one is from an evil neighbor or bad neighbor. Second one is from an evil person. Okay. We have a bunch of things going on. It says for the bad neighbor, you have to distance yourself from a evil person, a rasha. It says don't mitchaber. Don't become close. Don't be friend. Not clear which is worse, actually. Not clear. The language here could be explained different ways. The last one is al ticha esh mina paranud. Okay, how's that? I translate that. Don't abandon faith in divine retribution. Okay, so we need to understand what is each one of these three things saying. All right, number one, I think I summarized it here. If you could see, 1 second at home. Can you? Oh, let's take that out. Can you see that at home?
Yes.
Okay. Here are the three things. Let's do this like this. All right. Here we go.
Bad guys will get theirs.
So okay, so can you continue with that? So how do the bad guys will get theirs, fair enough. So how do you make sense of the first two pieces in connection to that message? That seems to be the final message for your explanation. You want to continue, Robert, you want to continue with that thought? We have three clauses. Keep a distance from an evil neighbor, do not become attached to the wicked, and do not abandon faith in divine retribution. So continue that thought. If that's the main theme of the Mishnah, don't give up. The bad guys will get there.
You
So
don't have to get sucked into being friends or what with them and feeling like maybe if it looks like things are good for them or whatever and prospering maybe. Because a lot of times it seems like the bad ones do better and the good ones don't.
can you hear Robert at home?
Barely.
Barely. Can you see the document I have here in front of me? Keep it what I'm highlighting right now?
No.
No?
I just see the distancing yourself from toxic relationships.
All right,
That's
so let me
the
read
first
it.
one you put up.
Okay. All right, here we go.
Robert's gonna speak.
Okay, Robert basically said that these three clauses here, they feed into each other. That's a simple reading of the Mishnah. So congratulations. That's a simple reading of the Mishnah. It's deep and simple at the same time. So number one, if you see these evildoers succeeding, you have this bad neighbor, this neighbor who is a horrible person. They I don't know, they play music at all hours of the night. They party, they trash your lawn at these parties, and they're very mean to you. And I don't know, you could bring a lot of bad things that a bad neighbor might do. Yet you see that they're thriving in business. They keep getting all God's blessings, and you misken, you nebech, you can't even close a deal that month or that year. They're doing all the wrong things, and you're trying to do all the right things, and you're trying to be a good person. You're trying to be a good neighbor. You come over to their house and you say, "Hey, do you need anything? Can I welcome to the neighborhood? Do you need? Can I help you with anything?" You go to their house and say, "Get out of it. Get out of here." Right?
It's just like Shabbos, where it says when all evildoers flourish and stuff and spring up like grass, they're only to be cut down.
Right. So let's connect to that. So the message of the Mishnah is, you're on a roll today. The message of the Mishnah is, don't get swayed by that. Don't get swayed by that. Don't think that the goodness in the end reward will be given to the wicked. They might be flourishing in this world, but know that at a certain point, they're going to pay for their bad deeds. Don't get caught up in that. Don't get caught up with the bad crew, with the bad group.
Necessarily in this law.
Yeah, exactly. That divine retribution here seems to be talking about in the future. You know, justice will be served. Those who do wrong to others, Hashem will take care of them. So if you see people succeeding and flourishing, and that draws you in. What?
5 million subscribers party.
I gotta mute somebody. Who am I muting? My dad? Okay. Am I allowed to do that? So.
What you're basically saying is Hashem is just. You have to.
That's number one. Hashem is just, there will be retribution. If you don't believe that, you might get drawn after these bad people. You might get drawn into a bad group. So know that it might look good for them right now, but it's not gonna be great. I'll give you another example, but it's actually a real life example. Like sometimes people, when you're in high school, when you're younger, you're drawn after like you want to be like the cool group or whatever. And then when you go to your reunion, like 20 or 30 years later, some of that cool group is still in high school, and the people who you consider nerdy, they're the ones who are their bosses, right? So don't get drawn after those who are doing the wrong thing. Wrong things beget or bring forth wrong, sometimes in this world, but in Hashem's eyes in the next world. Yeah.
So I think that, it's hard to swallow the fact that they'll get their due in the world to come because you're here now.
Yeah.
This is but that's why you can't abandon your faith. And you have to have this, closeness with Hashem and belief in Hashem that there just will come. Because if you don't have that faith, then you could think all along, well, so what? They're still bad, they still have a good life, financially.
Don't abandon. It's a
But
strong
you
language.
have to have strong enough faith to know that what will really matter is this world to come, Olam Haba, and that supposedly we've been told that that's when they'll get their due just.
You can also read it.
It's hard to swallow, but
Hard to swallow.
I think comes down to this whole.
Here's an alternative, another connected interpretation.
Okay,
Like somebody who's doing wrong, they maybe look like they're flourishing, but they're involved in something bad and negative. They're in the end, could be their retribution. It might not bring you everybody comfort when they see like that they're flourishing, but if you're doing something the wrong way, there's a certain disconnect from holiness. There's a certain disconnect from inner morality, and that's a bad life in itself. They say that the evil people, it's like they're dead in this world, and the righteous are like they're alive even in the next world. I mean, there's certain inner disconnect from goodness that comes from being connected to these bad influences, this bad life. So that could be another.
I don't think it's hard to believe. Because if you have the thought that we are here for just a small minutia of all time, and that our neshama is gonna, in other words,
You have to.
if you don't understand,
Can you
you
hear?
can't understand the concept,
You guys hear at home?
bad things happen to good people.
yes.
How do you justify that? You justify that Hashem is just, and that if not in this world, they'll get their due somewhere
So
along
you
the
don't have to convince me. I'm a rabbi. I believe that.
line.
What I'm saying is that not everybody. I'm saying some people struggle with that.
I understand.
So some people struggle with that. So that's an interpretation
You
that
have to believe that.
correct. So it's saying to the believers with despair. Now, for those who it's difficult for them to get to that place, so I'm going to offer a few other interpretations as well and connections to this. Yeah.
What about the concept of Hashem brought us into the physical world to be physical and to act through physical law and do physical things? We're supposed to be thinking,
Elevate this world.
yeah, elevate this
So
world.
that's a big question itself. Like what's the function of being in this world? Is this world a means or is it an ends? Are we
It's a function
here?
to bring good to the world.
So
Choose something
that's
good
the
to
answer
world.
there is that you've mentioned two approaches. Your last two comments, which are both right, okay? One, so it's really, the answer is really both. Judaism says we're here in this world is an ends in itself, meaning we are here to elevate the world, to make the world better. And there are as a big stream in Jewish thought, which says we're here passing through this world to get to the next world. So prepare yourself in this world so you'll be ready for the next world. Pirkei Avot says this. It says, this world is like a hallway. It's like a hallway to the banquet hall. Okay, so let's say you come, you get all dressed up. You took, you got it's a black tie. I don't know, is that tuxedo or black tie event? Okay, and I don't know if there's like other language for women dressing. It's just still black tie for women too. All right, so you get to the event, you're dressed up at this gala, and then you come in and there's people hanging out in the hallway, and you get to the hallway and you think that's the whole party, right? That would be foolish. The gala is all set up in this big, huge banquet hall, hundreds of people in there. It's beautiful. You have the best food. Yeah, but you are focusing only on the hallway. So the Pirkei Avot, there's a stream of Jewish thought which says this world is like a hallway. Do all you can to get through this world, do things the right way, so you can enter into the banquet hall, which is the future life, the Olam Haba. And there's a whole stream of thought which says the purpose of this world is for us to elevate this world, make this world a better place, to build the Beit HaMikdash, to do good things. Every good deed you do makes the world a better place. Now, how do you know which is the stronger approach within Judaism? Depends which think you're reading. That's the honest to God truth. Like, if you're learning from more modern Orthodox rabbis in the Orthodox circles, they will highlight more of the text to speak about this world. It's about being productive in this world. Rav Soloveitchik says our divine essence is to be a creative individual to produce in the world. If you read more mystical or more like sources to the farther right, ultra Orthodox, so you'll see they will focus on this world as a means to prepare themselves for the next world, and they'll do as much as they can to get to the next world. So really, it's a combination. I don't think if you look at things from a bird's eye perspective, you'll find both of those streams within Judaism. This text, if you read it this way, the way we read it, seems to be talking about retribution in the future. Seems to be speaking about the end of days, kind of the afterlife. Yeah.
Can I ask, so what can be Hashem's objective here? Like, why doesn't he say, if you're evil, you're going to suffer in this world and in the next world?
Correct.
Why does
Yeah.
Hashem
So-
want evil people to thrive?
So in answer to that, if the end of that evil person is to have retribution, Hashem rewards everybody. So that individual does some good things, so they're rewarded in this world for the good things.
But he gave us all choice.
That would be an explanation. There are other explanations.
As we just read in Bereshit this past week. They had a choice. Adam and Eve had a choice.
Yeah,
It was up to them. Hashem didn't tell them.
we're not denying that. We're saying you have a choice. There's consequences to your actions. But this Mishnah, but we can go. I don't want to go too far on the topic of retribution. That can take us kind of far off. But that's definitely a good topic. Yeah, I'm teaching this Shabbat actually. At shul, I forget what time, like 6ish or something like that. Why bad things happen. I'm going to bring multiple approaches within Jewish tradition and share how I think that they kind of can work together. So that topic will be addressed in some way. It's like a 35-minute class, 40 minutes. Yeah.
A quick throwback on what you said, the analogy between the banquet hall and the banquet. There's a third way of looking at this, which actually could combine the two of, if you believe, which we do, our religion supposedly believes in reincarnation and the neshama being eternal. If you believe that, that you keep coming until you learn what you're supposed to learn and then move on, that you can go through the banquet hall and then enter the banquet and then go through the exit door and go through another banquet and then go through another banquet. And why does it have to be one or the other?
So that's like also another explanation.
Part of it.
Yeah, so that's another topic. You're right. It can take us really far off though. The topic of retribution, that is another answer. Why there's good in this world to the evildoers. They might be getting a reward for previous.
Exactly.
I'm not gonna go too far into this, but not everybody in Jewish tradition believes in reincarnation. It's not a tenet of Jewish faith. Maimonides lists 13 principles of faith. not one of them is belief in reincarnation. He says you have to believe in the revival of the dead. Well, we could talk about that another time. But reincarnation, there's a debate on it. Rav Sadia Gaon said it's not a thing, or it's foolish to believe in it. Mystics say it's very much a thing. So there's a debate on that topic. On topic of the next world, if there's a next world, everybody would agree on that, traditional scholars, traditional rabbis. But reincarnation, there's a debate around that. All right, so let's do a little bit more here. I offered a different explanation here in my book, and I have a few more to share with you. Well, one thing I wanted to kind of like look into in this Mishnah is what's worse, just like an evil neighbor or a wicked person? I don't know. What do you think? What's worse?
Evil what?
What?
Evil neighbor.
What? An evil neighbor? What do you think at home? Actually, after Sandy, you start. Okay. What do you think at home? What's worse, a wicked neighbor or a wicked person?
Well,
A wicked
but
neighbor.
the wicked neighbor is a person, is a wicked person.
It says shachen ra. Let me define it clearly. Shachen ra means a bad neighbor. A rasha is an evil person. It's ra and rasha are different. So a bad neighbor versus an evil person. What's
Well,
worse?
if the neighbors planted a tree on my yard, I put them in the category of Russia. Sorry.
Ukraine, Russia?
Right.
Who else started to share something? Anybody else?
With just a neighbor, you can't get away from because they're right next door. But a wicked person, you can put distance between you and the wicked person. It's
Okay.
easier to get away from a wicked person than an evil neighbor.
Okay, yeah.
An evil person, that's their nature.
It seems that the way we're going to define it, Rasha seems to be worse than something that's Ra. Rasha is like the Rasha in the Haggadah. We're not that friendly to the wicked child in the Haggadah, unless you're modern and you reinterpret it in a positive way. But it seems like we're tough with them. We blunt the teeth. It seems like something.
And a bad neighbor could be just a relationship.
So what's worse?
To me, a wicked person.
So yeah.
Yeah, for me, the wicked person.
Can you hear at
worse than
home,
the
buddy?
bad nei- For me, the wicked person is worse than the bad neighbor, because the bad neighbor is only physically there, maybe 500 yards away from you, only when they're at home. The wicked person is everywhere. So, and has a lot much more influence over the world. So that's why the wicked person.
So I'm thinking about more in terms of their influence on me.
I would
Same
say-
thing.
Same thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would say that wicked is much worse. You could have a bad neighbor who gives $5 million to a hospital and saves Children's Hospital, and that hospital saves.
Meaning because they're not
thousands of
wicked,
lives.
they're bad. They do some bad things, but they do some good, you're saying. Wicked is. So this is kind of unclear actually, which is worse in the Mishnah. Okay, let me show you a chart. And really, I think I wanted to show you that you can go either way in our class. Kind of while we were discussing it. I was trying to think it through. With a bad neighbor, it says harchek, stay away. With an evildoer or a wicked person, it says al titchaber, don't associate or don't come close. So you could read this in different ways. Here's one option: the bad neighbor. It's on the next page. The first option is the bad neighbor is worse. Or you could read harchek, stay away from the bad neighbor, as completely stay away. Harchek, rachok, very far away. And then you read the next part of the evildoer. Don't become friends with them. Al titchaber, don't be a chaber. But you can be around them. Right? The bad neighbor's worse, perhaps because they're so close to you, the proximity, you see them all the time. They could be such a great influence. The wicked person, they're not always around you, so maybe they might not be as bad. The alternative, though, could be reading it differently. You could say, bad neighbor, harchek, keep a distance. Doesn't mean stay fully away. Keep a distance. But you can maintain a connection. When it comes to an evildoer, al titchaber, don't even have a connection. No connection at all. Completely stay away. So you can read it both ways. I've never really seen someone like this. There's different interpreters go different ways with this. Yeah.
Could it also be the translation? in the Hebrew, how the word is interpreted
Correct,
and how it extends versus bad neighbor, which is our English translation.
Correct.
May
So-
not have the depth.
correct. That's why I'm showing, like, for instance, when it says, don't meet chaber, don't connect, it could mean, don't become a friend with a wicked door, or it could mean, don't have any chibur, any connection at all. So it could go both ways, really. And I think it goes to that question of like, what's worse overall, but it's actually not the deepest discussion, but just it's interesting how you can read it both ways. But I want to actually share another thought with you in connection to this. So we have these three pieces. We have keep a distance, don't become attached, don't connect, do not abandon faith in divine retribution. So the way I explained it in the book was like this. I'm not speaking about divine punishment. That's simple reading, and that's the actual shot, like but I'm taking it out of its simple explanation, and I'm going to say like this. Many times people stay connected, people remain in bad relationships because even though their friends tell them this is really bad for you, that person's a bad influence for you, stay away from that neighbor, they're bad news. Don't, parents try to keep their kids away from bad groups or bad neighbors or bad friend groups, or there's just some wicked person who's like just a very bad influence. Parents try to keep them away, or relationships. Someone gets older and they're just in a bad relationship and they're drawn consistently to the bad boy or the bad girl, the bad person in the relationship. And they go in these cycles of like being drawn to it, and you don't always know why. There's something drawing somebody in. And I think what it could be saying here is you might be drawn into those relationships, and it could be coming from a place that you're afraid of what your life's going to be like without this. You might be, you're some type of like, could be addictive thing, or it could be like that this is filling some sort of void. And what's holding you back from leaving is you're afraid of how empty or how bad your life will be without this connection. So I think the Mishnah could be saying something like this. Don't despair of the Puranut. Puranut could mean retribution. Puranut also means bad times or bad things that could happen that befall an individual. So it's saying like this: don't be abandon your faith. Don't lose faith. Don't lose faith in the good because you're afraid of all the bad things that could happen to you if you disconnect from these bad people. So you can read it like this: do not abandon faith in the good because you're afraid of the Puranut. I'll teach you, don't abandon faith because of the Puranut. Don't abandon faith in a positive life that you can have because you're afraid of how bad things are going to be if you leave this relationship. Know that Hashem is with you, that sometimes when you leave something negative, you open up space for something more positive to enter. I'm not saying that there's not a lot of work that takes place in between that place when you're drawn into this negativity and the ability to leave and the ability to embrace something new. There's a lot of work that goes in between there. It's like therapy or whatever, a lot of self-examination. However, it's trying to give us a map, a direction. Don't lose faith in something good that can happen for you because you're afraid of all the negative things that could happen if you let go of this bad relationship. Have faith that if you let go of it, Hashem can help you, and Hashem can help you restore your life to something more positive. Is that clear how I was reading it? The Puranut here is not necessarily retribution, and it's more like you're afraid. People are afraid of what it's going to be like if they leave a negative connection. So the Mishnah could be telling us about that. So that's another way to interpret that. I have one more here, I think. Yeah. Okay. I actually had two more here, I think. Let me talk about this one. That's the next Mishnah, sorry. Oh, sorry, this is in the wrong. Oh, sorry. Okay. All right, so that was the message I wanted to get through on this one. Okay. Any thoughts on that?
We're good.
That's good.
Let's move on.
Yeah. All right. Next Mishnah. Yehuda ben Tabai and Shimon ben Shattach received oral tradition from them. This is page 27, actually. Okay. Yehuda ben Tabai and Shimon ben Shattach Yehuda ben Tamai, what did he say? He said, do not act as a judge. Do not, as a judge, play the part of an advocate. So like if the litigants, those in your, if you're a judge and those who come to judgment in front of you, they're standing in front of you, don't start acting like their lawyer. Don't give them clues. Don't feed them anything. Kind of take a distance, separate yourself as a judge so you can judge the case properly and don't like lead them in any direction. That's kind of what it's saying. Again, Pirkei Avot is really a lot of its guidance to judges. Pirkei Avot, as we said in the very first class, I'm sure you remember this, it's like a bit ago, but Pirkei Avot appears in the section on damages in the Mishnah, the 6 parts of the Mishnah. So it's really guidance in some ways to judges who are dealing with damages. However, over so many hundreds of years, so many interpretations have been added to it, and we read it in all kinds of different directions. And there's a lot of direction that's not just for the judges; it's for all of us. So here's somebody talking to the judges, saying, when you're a judge, don't play the part of an advocate. Don't be like an orech din. Okay? And when the litigants are standing before you, look at both of them like they're guilty, right? Innocent until proven, that's the opposite. Guilty until proven innocent. Okay? When they're in front of you, look at them as they're guilty. And when they leave your presence, look at them as if they're both innocent when they have accepted the judgment. Okay, so Ted, you want to explain this to us, being that this is your, I don't know, maybe there's other lawyers here as well. But.
That's a hard one. Advocate means you're taking somebody's side because you have to, you're taking a position.
You hear Ted? I know we do this all the time to you.
Yeah, an advocate means you have two people in front of you, each have different views of things or different circumstances. And if you take them over here, if you're an advocate, you end up taking a position of one of the litigants, and that's.
So what's it telling us to do?
Telling us to essentially to be fair and to back up. The job of the litigant is to convince the judge of their position. That's their job. The judge shouldn't be taking one side because that's weighing the scale.
Yeah. So it's we say in our court of law they're innocent until proven guilty, right? Mm-hmm. Here it's saying make them both guilty in your eyes when they're in front of you. Does that conflict with it, or?
Well, that works in that kind of language works in criminal cases. Civil cases, not really. Because it's not a guilt issue. It's a matter of somebody coming before the judge and presenting evidence to convince the judge of their position. And what this is saying is the judge can take the position of one of the parties.
Yeah, you have to have a lot of discernment, impartial. Yeah. So that's a simple reading of it. Now it says when they leave you, what does it say? When they leave you, see them as both as innocent, and there's a little condition there. You see them as innocent when they've accepted the judgment. Right?
It's almost like you start fresh. You
start fresh.
Like a clean slate, and you've gone through this litigation and discernment and whatever the judgment was, it was. Now let's go back and start it.
Yeah.
Which is kind of nice.
Yeah. So thank you. I think so too. And guess who else thinks that? Rabbi Sachs. I want to show you something. Yeah. I think this Mishnah, I have a few interpretations of this Mishnah. This Mishnah could be a pushback against cancel culture. How? In the sense that if you could read this in a more broad way by saying somebody who you could understand the judgment as if somebody's standing before us as a society and we're judging them and they may have done something wrong. We have to be as a society careful and have our guard up against wrongdoing in our society. We do not want to allow it to continue and to foment, etc. However, and if someone does something wrong, the society has to be tough with them and to point out their guilt. However, if that individual has tried to fix their ways and try to become better, there has to be a space for them to be able to reintegrate at a certain point. If they've done sincere tshuva, they've done repentance, and they try to get on a better path, we have to have a place for that in our society. If a society is not forgiving at all, then you run the risk of people just never being able to improve their ways or become better. So you can read the Mishnah like that. The Mishnah could be read like this. Sorry. So as a judge, don't play the part of an advocate. Like when society has to judge people, that they can't take sides and make one better than the other. They have to be careful, but you have to see things for what they are. And if someone's doing something wrong, you call it out. Now, once they've passed through the judgment of society, at that point, and they've accepted the judgment upon themselves, they're trying to get better. Society has to find a way to allow for people to try to reintegrate in some way if they've done something wrong. It's complicated, I know, with very heinous sins and bad things. I know. I'm just saying, like, I feel like our culture sometimes gets really stuck. Sometimes gets stuck in cancellation. So, yeah.
For instance, it says, and when,
Yeah.
It says, and when they leave your presence, look upon them as if they were both innocent.
Yeah.
So.
When they've gone.
Wait, and then they've gone through it, but I'm just wondering if there's a more concrete thing here that, let's say you're the judge and you see them in the street, 2 days later, and they're not in your presence, your judge presence anymore, that you should just look upon them as just people, as just citizens, and not judge them based on the fact that you had this interaction with.
So you bring it back, be out of the culture, you bring it back to just to the judge and his interaction, the judge's interaction. So that's another interpretation I have here. So you've already intuited two of them. So that's awesome. We're gonna get to that in a moment. I want to touch on this cancel culture thing because there's a good video on this by Sachs. I want to show you a clip from it, and he makes a distinction between guilt and shame, which I think is valuable. Yeah.
Now another aspect of what's being said, we're really talking about a judge acting impartially, and the rationale for that in terms of our society is the integrity of the system. In a certain sense, we're seeing this playing out nationally with what's going on with the courts, what's going on with the election, the strong issue of the integrity of the system, which is not what we're really talking about here, but that's really the essence of the importance of this section. It's integrity.
I hear that. Yeah.
No, you go to a judge and if you think the judge is crooked.
So, correct. You're 100% right. That's the first interpretation that we're offering, and you're 100% right. I'm offering a different interpretation right now connected to cancel culture. Lynn mentioned another explanation, which I want to offer in a moment. But let's stay on this one, the second one, which is connected to a society judging its individuals within the society. So here is a clip here from.
It's like when somebody gets out of prison and served their time, they got a sort of a clean slate, let them move forward and hopefully get back on with their life.
Yeah. So let's see here.
And basically they said, Ruth, explain the Japanese. Came across a government doing. They realized that they were going to have to wage war against a country they didn't understand. And so they asked an anthropologist by the name of Ruth Benedict. And basically they said, Ruth, explain the Japanese to us. And she did, and it was later published as a book called The Chrysanthemum and the Sword. And she explained the difference between a shame culture and a guilt culture. Shame and honor, guilt and righteousness. Very, very different cultures. America is a guilt culture. Japan was a shame culture. Now, in a guilt culture, there is that separation between the person and between the sinner and the sin. So that even though the person sinned, nonetheless, they remain intact and you can forgive. A guilt culture is a culture of forgiveness because the person remains pure, whatever. A shame culture is unforgiving. If you have been shamed, then, you go off quietly and commit suicide. Yes. Now, the West, being a Christian guilt culture, always had space for forgiveness. But today, the West is no longer a Christian culture. It's a media-driven culture. And we are in one of the supreme shame cultures of all time. That's what viral social media do to you. You get it wrong, that's it. You are shamed for life. And shame cultures don't have space for forgiveness.
So he's taking it even broader as to like, even if somebody on the other side disagrees with you, many people from different sides will shame them till oblivion if they had their way. I'm speaking here specifically about somebody who might have done something wrong actually and try to do tshuva from it, but the same idea, allowing space for forgiveness, for integration, even though you perceive somebody to have done something wrong, especially if they've done tshuva, if they've accepted upon themselves the judgment. So I think that could be read that way. What? Give me second. I'll try to get out of here. How do I get out?
And that's why we've lost forgiveness in public life.
It's very dynamic.
All right. Can you see this at home? Anne, you see 1-9?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yes.
Second. Okay, so that's one interpretation. Another interpretation that I offered in my book, this isn't the one that you mentioned, but it's one more, is another interpretation would be something like this. If a lot of times we're the judge. We judge cases in our lives. And we have the sides in front of us, right? We're weighing something, some sort of big decision, or it can even be something that somebody's really frustrating you or something like that. Right? So you have that case in front of you. And you could judge it. You could say the side of that you're right would be, they're really annoying. I don't know, they always do these annoying things or whatever. The side that you might not be right might be, oh, well, maybe this is coming from your own stuff, or maybe like you're not patient enough. You have to work on yourself. There's different sides to everything. And sometimes when we're judging things, we give a little bit more weight to one side over the other. A lot of times you give a lot more weight to our side over the other side, right? I talked about this on Yom, I think last class, and also on Yom Kippur, where it's like sometimes when I'm driving somewhere, I always understand why I need to go fast to get there. When somebody else next to me is driving to get somewhere and they're going fast, it's much more difficult to understand why they're doing that, right? So that's not really judging things favorably. That's giving more weight to one side over the other. And so what this mission is saying is when you're weighing something, the two sides of it, don't act like an advocate for one side or the other. Divorce yourself from it. Take some distance. And so that's what it's saying. When there's these two cases are standing before you, and you're in the midst of them, that could be very tempting to not to judge it in a partial way. So that's what they're saying. When it's standing before you, you're wrapped up in them. Then you have to see them both as negative. So I think the language is standing before you. That's how you can. When they're both standing in front of you, divorce yourself from them. See them both as negative to try to view both sides in an impartial way. And then once both sides have received proper judgment, then you could see them both in a positive way. Once they're no longer standing in front of you, once they've left your presence, once you judge them properly, then you could try to reintegrate and see the positive sides of both. You need to do a certain scrutiny of the case, and the different sides when they're standing right in front of you, it can be very tempting to just align with what you're more inclined to think. See them both as wicked, as rasha, so that you can analyze them in an impartial way. And then once they're no longer really burning right in front of you, then you can maybe embrace both of the sides in a more impartial way. It's really discernment, really scrutinizing what's motivating us in a decision. Distance yourself, make them both as wicked, so that you can eventually be able to embrace them in some way afterwards in a more positive way. So does that make sense? Yeah.
Mathematically, two negatives equal positives.
Thank you. I wanna,
Put that in the book.
yeah,
If you
that's in the sequel. Did you come up with that? No, sure.
No, Robin did, it just might.
One more explanation, okay? I think this explanation, the explanation I offer, I didn't go into this in the book. This is like a new level, what I just added. I never talked about the standing in front of you versus it's left you, it's moved away from you. I think that's a good way to take the interpretation I offered in the book and really fit it into the Mishnah. One more explanation with what Lynn was saying is that this happens a lot of times in parenting, grandparenting, or dealing with employees or whatever. Sometimes as an employer, or as a parent, or as an authority, you have to be strict. You have to act in strict judgment. You have to, and in those moments when you're in front of the individual who you're working with, it's actually it could be good for people at times to be strict with them, to give them strict guidelines. In those moments, they're not easy. It's not easy setting down the law with your kids, your whoever, your employees. It's not easy. And in those moments, you might have to be very tough. The Mishnah is saying when they're standing in front of you, you could be tough. However, don't let that take you over. That, it's very difficult sometimes. It's difficult to disengage from that judgment. You need to be strict at times. But if you let that spill over to all your other engagements with that individual, that's a negative thing. So when they're standing in front of you and you need to enforce judgment, like the Mishnah says, is like this. When they're standing in front of you, don't act like an advocate. Be strict, right? However, when they leave your presence and they've already accepted the judgment, what does that mean? They've already gone through your judgment. Not that they've accepted it upon themselves. They've already gone through that strictness that you need to implement there. At that point, then you can still be nice to them. Meaning, don't let it overtake you on the inside. So the Rambam has a classic text where he speaks about how to deal with anger with your kid, with your kids. He says, and he says that anger is a very bad thing, right? He says anger is a bad quality. Right? You should school yourself to not become angry, even though it's fitting to become angry. If you should wish to arouse fear in your children and household or within the community, if he is a communal leader and wishes to be angry at them to motivate them to return to the proper path, he should present an angry front to them to punish them, but he should be inwardly calm. It's not an easy thing to do, right? It's like an ideal aspiration. However, what he's saying is something similar. I think what Lynn was saying. And how we're interpreting the Mishnah. When they're standing in front of you, put on an angry front. Be strict in judgment. See them both. See all the sides in front of you as evil. Be angry or whatever. But when they leave your presence, they've already gone through the judgment that you put them through. Then you can accept them. You can be more jovial, be more connected. If you let that anger take over you and seep into your essence, it can take you over, and you're not at that point. You're not doing them a favor. You've done something to your own detriment because it's kind of taking you over. So that could be another way to read the Mishnah. Okay, so I think that's kind of what the Rambam says. That's how you can read it like this. When they're standing in front of you, look at them as guilty, as the sides guilty, the different guilty sides of the equation. When they leave your presence, look at them as innocent. Be nice to them on the street. Because they've already gone through your judgment. Like don't let it take you over in every facet of life. That could be another interpretation. So those are 3 interpretations of the Mishnah. There's 4 really. The first one.
Can I just say something? As a teacher, I'll tell you one of the things, like when you have a very frustrating and aggravating day with a kid in your class and you need to be authoritative and all that. Once it's done, this really took practice. Go home, release it. Next day I come in and that kid is the focus of everything positive I can think of, because we need to start fresh from the beginning with a great positive relationship, and it almost works every time. So that's sort of like how
really this. Like when they're standing in front of you that first day, you're trying to
per day, but I mean
whatever.
Whatever.
The next time they're with you, they left your presence, you've gone home, you come back,
right?
And see them as innocent, try to re-embrace them. Because they've already gone through the judgment of the day before. That's a way to read it. So there's a few different interpretations. I'll just summarize. interpretations, then we can move on a little bit to the next Mishnah, okay? The first interpretation was simple reading. It's talking about a judge. You should not feed the different sides because it's the integrity of the judicial process, right? The next one was explained based on Rabbi Sachs, speaking about a society. A society should not. They have to be. They're a guilt society. Says there are those who are guilty. We have to be strict and enforce rules and create a moral system. However, if an individual has done something wrong and they've accepted upon themselves the judgment to become better, we have to find a way to help them not be shamed forever. Another interpretation that we offered was the one I offered, which was about when you're judging something for yourself in your life. You have a case in front of you. Don't when it's standing right in front of you, create some distance. See it both sides as evil, and when you do that, then you make some distance. They're away from you, and then you could try to see the good in each side, but don't immediately see the good in all of it because you could be swayed by your own inclinations. The final interpretation that we offered was based on the Rambam. It's talking about when we need to implement justice on somebody else, judgment. At that point, you have to be strict and tough. However, don't let that take you over. And when you see them later on, and they've already gone through the judgment, so you can re-embrace them and still be nice. So those are a few, like 4 different interpretations. All right, how you feeling? Good. You ready for another Mishnah? Yeah. Okay. Keep rolling. Let's keep rolling. How you doing at home?
Fine.
Yeah, good.
We're good.
Okay, awesome. All right, let's go next Mishnah.
Have you read me correctly?
What?
It's a little inside joke.
I
Nothing.
have it on recording. I'll listen to it later.
That's right. You may have heard it in the speaker.
Everything, we hear everything. All right. Shimon ben Shattach Omer. Have marbe lachkor et ha'edim. Behevi zahir bidvarecha. Shema mitocham yilmadu l'shaker. Shimon ben Shattach used to say, be thorough in the interrogation of witnesses and be careful with your words. Lest from them they learn to lie. Okay? The simple explanation is that if you have witnesses in front of you, sometimes when you're like, it happens in parenting as well, like you're trying to get to the bottom of like what, one kid says, they did this wrong. And says, they did that wrong. They stole from me. So you're trying to get to some semblance of truth, which is always impossible to get to. But if you kind of lead them on a certain way and they follow your way, you won't be able to get to the truth. You need to kind of try to not lead on any side. When you're interrogating, be careful, and so they don't learn to lie through your interrogation. So they don't see where you're going.
Take yourself out of the interrogation.
Take yourself out of interrogation. Take your final.
No, take I out of your interrogation.
Yeah.
Just hear
And
what
your final goal of where you want to get to. In your
right, not right away. Yeah.
Yeah, like it happens like that. You ever see in like what's the interrogation room? Is that what it is? Like when sometimes they'll be interrogating a witness, and at a certain point, the witness will just say, because they're so fatigued or whatever, they'll say what the interrogator wants them to say. But you're not always at that point arriving at the ultimate truth. That person has been fed something by the interrogator. So you have to be careful. Try to get to the truth. You shouldn't feed those in front of you. That's a simple explanation. The interpretation that I offered in the book, anybody have another thought that's coming up to them as they were reading this? Maybe like reading it out of context or a different way?
All right, we can go on to 10 now.
Oh, we're not yet. We're still on 9. We have some good stuff to say. Yeah. So here's another interpretation I offered in the book to this. Okay, so the Sfat Emet says that there are witnesses in our lives. Who are the witnesses? We have always the Yetzer Hara and the Yetzer Hatov. The good inclination, the evil inclination is always trying to make its claim against us to follow its path. It says that maybe there's some text that talks about them as witnesses or something like that. So we have the good inclinations telling us to do the right thing. We have the evil inclination telling us to do the wrong thing. And sometimes we can feed them we get caught up in their direction, and we start to think that that one is more correct than the other. In the book, I talk about how there's no such thing as a fully evil thing and a fully bad thing, a fully good thing. Something can be good, but too much of it can be bad. Something can be bad, but in some contexts it could be good. So an example would be sometimes you think you want to give somebody something. You have a lot of love or some sort of goodness to give to them, but they're not able to receive it at that time. They're not in the right space. And it happens a lot of times in like a shiva home. Somebody's going through a tough time, and somebody who's really just trying to help won't stop talking about a lot of things. And the individuals, like, they're just going through a tough time. Like, they need their space, right? Or it happens. There's a lot. Something that's like giving too much good that can end up something bad. Another case would be I brought in the book was like I knew people in yeshiva who I had this friend. I didn't bring this in the book. I had this friend who we both started out at the same place religiously. We came to yeshiva. We were both not religious at the time. He like shot really fast beyond me in terms of his religiosity. Like, it took me a while to like get the kippah on and then to like get the tzitzis on. He was like the first month or two, he was already like tzitzis, kippah. He was like there. Turns out, this is a true story. Turns out, like, and I'm going to explain how it's connected to the Mishnah. Okay. Turns out that like a year or two later, maybe a year and a half later, maybe 2 years later, I see him. He went to like the top yeshiva very quickly. Like 2 years later, I see him at the Givat Ram Hebrew University Library. I'm doing like some Torah learning. I'm like, what are you up to? It's like, wait, is that you? He was without a yarmulke. He was smoking a cigarette outside. I'm not judging that, whatever. I'm just saying. I was like, what are you up to? I was like, you still learning Torah? He's like, no, I'm specializing in Islamic studies. I'm doing my graduate degree. I have no judgment on any of those things. I'm just saying that he went very fast. He went very, very fast. Sometimes when you take too much of a good thing, it can become something bad. Okay, so that's an example of something good. Done too much can be something bad.
What was the bad part?
The bad part was, I think that if he would have paced himself, he could have stayed in religion. He left religion.
But did he mistreat anybody? Like, did he hold it against you that you weren't moving as fast as he was?
I think that I think he really liked Judaism. I think he burnt himself out to the point that he could not allow himself at that point to properly benefit from Judaism. So I view it as bad.
Moderation, too much of any good thing will get bad.
Correct. So I think that's kind of what the Mishnah might be saying. You have the two witnesses who are speaking to you, right? It says, and you have to interrogate them. Don't let them convince you that something's, don't let the evil inclination convince you, don't let the good inclination convince you that every good inclination is right. Be careful when you're interrogating them. They be careful. Don't let them learn from your words. Don't allow them to, don't guide yourself through your good inclination to kind of, they can learn to, I have to fit this into the words, but they can, lest they learn to lie from your words. If you allow the good inclination to just guide you and you say, you're fine, you're good, they'll learn to lie to you, and the evil good inclination will continue to tell you, only do this good thing all the time. That would be bad. Similarly, the bad inclination, sometimes doing something that's considered bad is good. I think I brought an example of that here. Yeah.
Neither of them should be seen in absolutes. And I've always thought, from the time that a rabbi, when my son was getting bar mitzvah, and he was, a little troubled, 12, 13 years old. It's like, well, they get Zara, they get Tov, and you need to, pay attention.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, there's absolutes.
Yeah.
Absolute.
So I'm pushing back against that. I'm pushing back against that. I'm pushing back against that. When I was in high school, I had a family member who was going through like Narcotics Anonymous. And I remember reading at the time the literature. And I remember before I was like 16, I remember reading, I was like, these are your shortcomings, these are your attributes. Your attribute is generosity. Your shortcoming is anger. Or everything was like a binary distinction. I remember at the time that like rubbed me the right, I had no language for that. Didn't even know what Judaism. I had some Jewish background. I didn't know anything. As I kept growing, I realized that like what bothered me about that is that like it's bad when it's used the wrong way, and it could be good. Like for instance, I brought an example of anger. Anger is bad. Rambam, we learned him. He said it's really bad. But there's times if you're not angry at injustice, you can't fight injustice the proper way. And so there's times when anger could be good. There's times when you have to hate certain evil things. It shouldn't take you over. Every trait that's negative could be used in a positive way. So if you don't properly interrogate these witnesses and you just keep telling them, oh, you're right, they can learn from your language, meaning your good inclination, your evil inclination, to just lie to you and continuously guide you the wrong way. We have to be have more discernment and say the good inclination is good when it leads us to good things, and the bad inclination is bad when it leads us to bad things. But there's times when you can use your negative inclination for good. Another one is like lusts or passions, negative, lust for things. So if there was no lust at all, the Talmud says if at one point they got rid of it was like a whole story. At one time they got rid of the inclination. The rabbis slaughtered it, and then people were not procreating, right? So from there they want to say that every negative thing, a positive, it can be channeled positively, and similarly, everything positive can become negative if you overdo it. So I think this Mishnah might be hinting to that when it's saying you have to properly interrogate the witnesses and don't let them lead. Don't through your words let them lead you to lies. They can learn from your words to lie to you. You have to be strict with them so they don't guide you towards lies, which would be to an extreme way. I feel like my friend, he was being guided by his good inclination. He guided all the way out of yeshiva, all the way out of Judaism, because of that good inclination that led him to be overly religious in a way that was not a healthy path for him. So I think you can. Mystical texts, Hasidic texts, and other texts push back against the binary of strictly bad and strictly good. Rather, we have to figure out when it's good and when it's bad. So I go talk about that. All right, I think I need a little bit more work in fitting into that language there, but I think this idea of from our words they can learn to lie if we allow them to just be the good inclination, just be only good, and the bad inclination only bad. It will lead us toward a false place. We have to have less of a binary approach to that. All right, Sharpah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Have a good week.